The entire inheritance goes to the funeral organizer. Thanks for the big money, Trevor. Stephen and his wife were acting ridiculously in front of the coffin, giving thumbs up and taking pictures, causing a ruckus. They were convinced they'd get the inheritance and kept saying things like, "Today is a great day." But I wonder if they'd still be happy once they found out what the inheritance really was. I can't wait to see their reactions when they learn the truth. My name is Kristen, and I'm 46 years old. During the long holiday, I indulged in lots of delicious food and gained a bit of weight. Well, I suppose my metabolism will speed up in the summer, and I'll lose the weight. Although, I said the same thing last year and didn't lose any weight in the end. Sigh. I work hard at home and my job, so I think it's okay to indulge a little during the holidays and do what I like. Is indulgence bad? No, it's my money, so it's fine. After all, some people out there think it's okay to splurge with someone else's money. It all started when I was in my 30s. I had been married to my husband Taylor for several years. We received the good news that Taylor's brother, Stephen, was finally getting married. Stephen's getting married, huh? I wonder if it'll be okay. Taylor and I both sighed with concern. Stephen is a rather quirky person. Taylor's family is quite wealthy. His father, Trevor, comes from a long line of wealthy people. Although the family name isn't as influential as it used to be, Trevor has managed to keep the wealth through investments. Despite never having to work outside, he still makes a good living just by watching the stock market. So, they're still considered well off by most standards. Taylor often said, "There wasn't much emphasis on frugality when I was a kid." Because of that, his sense of money was quite skewed. It was only after becoming an adult and interacting with colleagues and bosses that he started to gain a more common-sense approach to money. Stephen, on the other hand, had an even more distorted sense of money than Taylor, perhaps because he had been pampered as the eldest son. He would buy whatever he wanted without hesitation and, despite having been in the workforce for quite some time, had no savings at all. He didn't even have the concept of saving money, spending his entire monthly salary every month. Moreover, he spent money on frivolous things. He would buy a large number of trendy clothes because celebrities wore them, order home appliances from TV shopping that he never used, and purchase large quantities of snacks and manga trending on social media. Stephen's family was worried about him and tried to advise him, saying, "Even elementary school kids save their allowance, so you should too." But it had no effect. Instead, he said, "We have money. I have a job. If you're still worried, I should just marry someone rich." Stephen was sociable and attractive, partly because of his wealthy background, but his relationships never lasted. Women were put off by his extravagant spending and thought of him as unsuitable for marriage. We were concerned about Stephen's marriage. Would his wife tolerate his spending? Or was she wealthy as he declared? Either way, we sensed trouble. And our instincts were right. Stephen's wife, Sabrina, came from a family that had become very wealthy through organic farming. They not only ran a farm but also operated direct sales outlets, and their business was booming. They were clearly a more prominent family than ours. Stephen achieved his goal of marrying into wealth and, before the wedding, said, "Sabrina is the ugliest of all my girlfriends, but she has a secure wallet, so she's a good wife." His cold manner made it clear that he had no affection for Sabrina. We felt sorry for her, thinking she had been deceived by such a man. Then, one day, Sabrina inadvertently revealed her true feelings in front of her Mil, Aurora. "I wanted a husband with money, so Stephen is the ideal partner." She realized her slip and quickly covered her mouth in panic. Her flustered reaction showed she truly thought she had messed up. She couldn't even find words to cover it up. So, she too had married Stephen for his money. Faced with a couple who married for money, we and my in-laws were exasperated and couldn't even say, "At least they're well matched. At least they're well matched." People who marry for money. I hope it doesn't lead to trouble. One day, while harboring such anxieties, a problem arose just as we expected. It happened during the Christmas visit to the in-laws. "Wow! Such a lavish spread!" Sabrina exclaimed with delight at the sight of the sumptuous feast laid out on the table. "It's your first visit home since getting married, so I ordered catering from a place we frequent," Trevor said, smiling warmly at Sabrina, hoping she would be pleased. Even I, who had visited many times before, was astonished by the extravagance of the dinner that evening. It was probably some kind of haute cuisine. There were elegant fish tranches, carpaccio adorned with caviar and truffles, and various other dishes that looked quite expensive. The desserts, beautifully presented, were equally impressive and lifted one's spirits just by looking at them. For a woman who loves chic things, this meal would surely be a delight. Sabrina, who is younger than my husband and me, prefers somewhat flashy outfits. Even though I don't know her well, I could tell from her appearance that she likely has a taste for fashionable items. Trevor probably chose dishes that he thought Sabrina would like. In fact, when I first visited, Trevor had asked Taylor about my favorite foods and had them prepared. Before marrying Taylor, I had a preconceived notion that rich people were arrogant, which made me wary. However, Trevor, born into wealth, is genuinely kind. Needless to say, I quietly reflected on my unfounded prejudices. I expected Sabrina would appreciate Trevor's thoughtful gesture and feel happy, but I'm so happy. Good thing we brought a Ziploc container. With that, Sabrina and Stephen pulled out a container from their bags and began packing the food. Everyone was dumbfounded by their shameless and brazen behavior. However, the couple seemed oblivious to our reactions. "Let's take extra of this. I love salmon. That chicken looks tasty, let's take it all. How long will this last? Will it stay fresh until we get home? Even if it gives us a bit of food poisoning, we can just take a day off work. Hospital bills would cost us, though. We'll be fine with just resting." Chatting cheerfully, Stephen and Sabrina filled their container, and before we knew it, more than half of the food on the table had been taken. Satisfied with their filled containers, they then began to eat the food. We, who had been speechless at their outrageous behavior, couldn't help but exclaim, "Wait, what are you doing? What makes you think you can just take the food?" Aurora scolded sternly. Trevor, too, was angry. "I prepared this for everyone to enjoy together. What do you think you're doing?" "What? You prepared this for us, right? So, it's fine if we take it home, isn't it?" Sabrina said with a surprised look. Seeing her acting as if she was in the right, my in-laws and my husband and I were utterly disheartened. This person is even more problematic than we thought. Meanwhile, this will save us on grocery expenses. I'll buy again with the money we save," Stephen added. "If you're going to act like that, then leave," Aurora shouted angrily. It was the only reasonable response. However, Sabrina, now with a dissatisfied expression, retorted, "What's this about? No one told us we couldn't take the food home." She then added condescendingly, "I could understand if you had prepared something more expensive and then got mad about us taking it, but..." Her face turned red with anger. "Get out. As long as I'm alive, I will never let you into this house again." With that, Aurora forcibly pushed the couple out to the front door. Stephen and Sabrina resisted, complaining all the while, but Aurora was resolute, no matter what they said. We couldn't help but worry about her, saying, "Pooh, please calm down, your blood pressure might rise." But we didn't care about Stephen and Sabrina at all. In fact, we were thinking, just as Aurora said, get out. We didn't want to spend Christmas with such people. Stephen and Sabrina, realizing no one was on their side, seemed dissatisfied, but they left the house casually, thinking, well, at least we got the food. The storm had finally passed. Even in this situation, the fact that they managed to hold on to their container was astonishing, making us sigh in disbelief. After that, my husband and I stayed at the in-laws' house, but it goes without saying that the Christmas atmosphere was awkward. We hadn't done anything wrong, though. It was a few months later when it happened. While I was doing housework at home, the intercom rang, and when I looked at the monitor, there stood Sabrina. "Sabrina, what brings you here?" "I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I'd drop by." "It's cold outside, can I come in?" She was Stephen's wife, after all. I had no choice but to let her in. Even though I wanted to say, "You're a bother." I let her in, making no effort to hide my displeasure. You wonder if she didn't notice my expression? She's the kind of person who doesn't care about such things, making it all the more frustrating. As expected, Sabrina didn't even glance at my expression and entered the house as if she owned it. See, this is the kind of person she is, I thought, feeling utterly exasperated. "So, what brings you here?" I noticed that my tone had become a bit sharp, but I didn't bother to soften it. In response to my question, "Recently, I've been having money troubles. The economy is bad, and prices are higher than before, you know?" She began speaking abruptly. I wondered what she was getting at, but replied, "Yeah, I guess that's true." She continued the conversation with a "So anyway," but still didn't explain why she had come to our house, which made me feel uneasy. One thing I did notice was that all her conversations seemed to revolve around money. She talked about low wages, wondered how much actresses on TV were getting paid, and mentioned her interest in investments. A little small talk about money wouldn't usually bother me, but it was money, 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 all the time, and it was getting on my nerves. Did she come here just to talk about money with me? That couldn't possibly be the reason, could it? Or maybe she just didn't have any other topics to talk about? I wasn't very fond of Sabrina, and spending nearly 2 hours alone with her was exhausting. Hoping she'd leave soon. "So, what do you need?" I asked again. "Oh, I came to borrow some toilet paper." She then smiled and answered, "Excuse me?" I couldn't believe my ears and looked at her in surprise. "The local drugstore ran out of toilet paper, and we're out of stock at home, so we're in a bit of a bind." "I think other stores should have some. The ones in this neighborhood are definitely stocked." "Oh, but I'd hate to go to the store and find out they're sold out again. Please just lend me some." I suspected that Sabrina's claim about the toilet paper being sold out was a blatant lie. This wasn't the COVID-19 pandemic anymore, and as long as she wasn't picky about brands, it should be available. Besides, I've never heard of borrowing toilet paper. Would she take a few sheets? Or a whole roll? Moreover, did Sabrina, with her lack of common sense, even intend to return what she borrowed? Frustrated by her ridiculous request, I asked, "You say you want to borrow it, but will you actually return it?" To which she replied, "Of course, I will." Her voice was clearly strained. She had a look on her face that said, "I never thought of that." It was obvious she had no intention of returning it. Not that I hadn't already figured that out. So essentially, Sabrina was asking me to give her toilet paper. How audacious of her. I was exasperated and sighed deeply. "You can definitely buy some at the local supermarket, so please purchase it yourself. What? How can you say that when my family is in trouble? It's just a little bit, can't you lend it to me? Stingy. I wanted to retort who was really the stingy one, but I held back. If I lend it to you, we'll be the ones in trouble. Please leave. Oh. You're so rigid. Then lend me some sauce. Saying this, Sabrina walked briskly to the kitchen and casually stuffed a bottle of sauce into her bag. Hey! What are you doing? It's your fault for not even lending me toilet paper. What's wrong with taking a little sauce? Sabrina, arguing from the absurd stance that it was only natural I should lend her something. It was just insane. I repeatedly asked her to stop, but Sabrina, unsurprisingly, ignored my pleas, and in the end, she helped herself to some sauce, oil, salt, and other items from the kitchen, packing them into her bag. I was reluctantly forced to lend them to her. As expected, those items were never returned despite waiting. Moreover, as she was leaving, I noticed something that shocked me. There was a suitcase by the entrance that I hadn't noticed earlier in my surprise at her sudden visit. This can't be real, I thought, astonished. How much did she plan to borrow, or rather, take? Of course, I discussed this with Taylor, and we decided to keep our distance from the Stephen couple. A few years later, Trevor fell ill and was given less than a year to live. He would be living in the hospital from now on. This sparked a new problem visiting him. Trevor needed fresh clothes brought to him 2 or 3 times a week, but Aurora had bad legs and didn't have a driver's license. Moreover, the hospital where Trevor was admitted was in a large hospital in the next city. The transportation wasn't very convenient, and given Aurora's condition, frequent visits were going to be tough. We both had jobs and lived far from where Aurora and Trevor lived. While we had driver's licenses, we didn't own a car because we lived in a well-connected urban area. Visiting Trevor regularly was, while we wanted to help, it wasn't realistic. In desperation, Aurora contacted Stephen and his wife, explained the situation, and asked for help. This happened during a so-called family meeting, where my husband and I, Stephen and his wife, and Aurora gathered together. Is it true that Dad collapsed? Stephen asked. It's true. Aurora answered with a gloomy face. Seeing Stephen and Sabrina's serious expressions made it seem like that Christmas commotion never happened. Well, that incident was due to their stingy nature. But if their real father collapses, even Stephen and Sabrina would get serious, or so I thought. Then we need to talk about the inheritance as well. Yes, how much will we get? I think it's determined by law. What? I want a lot. You're the eldest son, right? Yeah, I'm the eldest son, so I should get a lot. Right, Mom? Stephen and Sabrina, with serious expressions, were not worried about Trevor, but were casually talking about wanting a lot of inheritance. We were dumbfounded. Is this really the time to talk about that? Stephen? We gathered here today to discuss the hospital visits. I started to say. Oh, you and your wife can handle that. What? We don't need to visit. We've seen Dad's face many times since we were kids. Seeing him next in a coffin is enough, Stephen said, laughing loudly. He seemed to think he made a clever joke. What nonsense. While we were feeling utterly hopeless at Stephen's words, Sabrina said something shocking. There's no reason for us to come here other than to discuss the inheritance. By the way, Aurora, who didn't need to apologize at all, had called Stephen and Sabrina after the Christmas commotion to apologize, saying, I said too much back then. She did that just to hope that everyone would look after Trevor together. In truth, Aurora wanted to visit Trevor herself, but she couldn't. Getting old is frustrating, as Aurora herself lamented. Of course, if it was just about delivering clothes, the hospital had rental options. But Aurora didn't choose that because she didn't want Trevor to be left alone without any family to talk to during his hospital stay. She wanted everyone to show their faces to Trevor, especially now, in his final days. Stephen and Sabrina's words completely trampled on that hope, or rather, they didn't even realize it. My wife and I felt a growing anger.
He's your real father. How can you say such a thing? Taylor shouted.
But Stephen just smiled frivolously. Well, everyone goes to heaven eventually. Money stays in your hands, though. Sabrina even said,
I'm not even related by blood, so as long as we get money, it's all good.
Aurora was so devastated by the heartless words of Stephen and his wife that she burst into tears, saying,
Poor Trevor.
Since Trevor's collapse, Aurora had been emotionally unstable, and this treatment was too cruel. Eventually, after a heated argument between Taylor and Stephen left, saying, Well, you handle the rest. And he and his wife left on their own accord. Taylor and I had somewhat expected that relying on Stephen and his wife would be futile. But we thought they would at least be somewhat supportive. Since a family member had collapsed, we never imagined they would be so uncooperative. In the end, I decided to live with my in-laws for the time being. This meant living separately from Taylor. Even though I had a job, it was only part-time without any significant position, unlike Taylor. I was easily replaceable. The only issue was the transportation problem, so after discussing it with Taylor, I moved in with my in-laws and took on the responsibility of visiting Trevor. By carrying heavy items like clothes, Aurora could use public transportation with me to visit him. It was challenging, but I believed it was for the good of my in-laws and continued this lifestyle. A few months later, Trevor passed away. His final expression was peaceful, so I want to believe he was happy. While comforting the tearful Aurora at the funeral. Hey Sabrina, take a picture.
Thumbs up.
Stephen and his wife were taking pictures in front of Trevor's coffin, giving a thumbs up. Wait, why are they at the funeral? Didn't we tell them not to come? We had no intention of inviting Stephen and his wife to the funeral. In fact, they hadn't attended the wake. Because we hadn't told them about his passing. However, a relative of Taylor's had informed them, and for some reason, they decided to attend the funeral. Seeing Stephen and his wife being so jubilant,
What are you doing?
I confronted them. Today is a happy day. Stephen responded.
What?
Dad died, which means a big money opportunity. Stephen gave a thumbs up. Sabrina laughed lightly, saying,
Good things happen if you try hard enough.
What exactly did you work hard at? My fists clenched in anger. My body shaking with rage.
A happy occasion? I can't believe you. How can you say such a thing?
Well, Kristen, I should be asking you the same thing. Even if he's your FIL, he's just some guy, right? You're getting an inheritance too, so let's celebrate together. Well, most of it will be mine, though.
That's right, let's celebrate. But the inheritance goes entirely to the funeral organizer. Thank you for the fortune, Trevor.
Stephen and Sabrina high-fived, celebrating. Their outrageous behavior left not just us, but all the relatives in shock. Besides, the funeral organizer is Aurora. There's no way we would entrust it to you. Don't make decisions on your own. And, inheritance, they seem clueless. Listen, you've been going on about the inheritance, but it's not just 0. It's negative. What? Stephen and Sabrina were stunned by my words.
Well, what do you mean?
Sabrina asked eagerly. Trevor gave pre-mortem gifts to Aurora and me.
What?
Realizing Stephen wasn't showing up at the hospital, Trevor inquired about our current situation in detail. Reluctantly, we explained everything. If that's the case, I'll give pre-mortem gifts to Kristen and Aurora for taking care of me even while living separately. We never asked for money. This decision was entirely Trevor's goodwill. However, Trevor, upon hearing our discussion, said angrily to Stephen and his wife,
"How dare you treat people like an ATM?"
It seemed he was inclined not to give them any inheritance because of this.
Well, I understand that, but then at most it should be 0, right? Why is it negative?
Sabrina's question made Taylor and me exchange glances. Taylor spoke quietly. Dad seemed to have co-signed a loan for an old colleague.
What?
Stephen and Sabrina were stunned. Aurora, looking distant, added,
"He was a good-hearted man." So, what's the status of that loan now?
Sabrina asked, trembling slightly.
It looks like the borrower skipped town. We got a notice yesterday to pay the remaining debt. What? How are we supposed to handle that? Sabrina demanded.
Since it's part of Dad's estate, you two will have to pay it off, Taylor said calmly.
Why us? You're an heir too. Stephen shouted. That's right.
Sabrina echoed. Their panic made us, including Aurora, burst into laughter. Annoyed, Stephen snapped.
What's so funny?
Taylor and Aurora renounced their inheritance after the pre-mortem gifts, I explained.
What?
Stephen and Sabrina gaped in shock.
Is that even possible?
Sabrina asked. It is.
The two processes are separate, so receiving one doesn't prevent the other. There are tax implications, but unlike you, we're not overly concerned about money. Paying taxes is a small price compared to inheriting debt.
I smirked as I spoke, and Sabrina turned red with anger, yelling.
Who's overly concerned about money? Are you saying you knew Trevor was a co-signer? If not, Stephen didn't receive any pre-mortem gifts, so he renounced an inheritance of 0. You must have known. It's unfair.
You're quite shallow. We had no idea.
Trevor just advised us to renounce the inheritance after the gifts. It happened a long time ago, and maybe Trevor forgot about it in his sickbed, or perhaps he had a bad feeling. Is that even possible?
Maybe our good deeds brought us some divine assistance, I said with a smile. However, Stephen and Sabrina's expressions remained grim. Sabrina's face grew more and more stern.
I thought being the eldest son meant there'd be an inheritance. I've been tricked. I never should have married you,
she shouted.
Hey, there's no need to go that far. I'm still your husband,
Stephen retorted.
Yeah, right. You only married me for my family's money,
Sabrina shot back.
Well, the same goes for you. And you never let me enjoy any of that money because you're so stingy. This marriage is my biggest regret,
Stephen countered.
What did you say? You're the one who spends too much just because you think you have money. What will we do if we run out? You should be saving more,
Sabrina yelled.
That's exactly why I say you're obsessed with money. You have plenty, but you always make us live like misers. You've turned me into someone who's just as money-obsessed as you are,
Stephen retorted.
I'm just teaching you to be responsible with money,
Sabrina insisted. This couple, they seem so similar yet can't agree on anything. It would be entertaining if it weren't taking place at Trevor's funeral. I wished they would stop arguing so loudly.
I'm sorry to interrupt your lively discussion,
I said.
But as I mentioned, You're responsible for paying off the negative inheritance.
Stephen and Sabrina protested, arguing why they should have to bear this burden.
Wait, I can just renounce the inheritance too,
Stephen exclaimed, looking triumphant as if he had just had a brilliant idea. Sabrina quickly agreed.
The inheritance is 0, but that's better than a negative one.
Stephen laughed.
Stephen, didn't you sell some of Trevor's belongings before coming here?
I asked. What? How did you know that? Stephen's eyes widened in surprise.
I happened to overhear you on the phone with a friend earlier. You sold Trevor's watch at your friend's store for $20,000, right? Yeah, I stopped by the old house and found some valuable stuff.
So I've already made some money.
0 inheritance is fine by me, but maybe there's still more valuable stuff among the belongings.
I should go look, Stephen said, grinning.
Well, that's fine. Those items are part of your inheritance now,
I replied.
Yeah, they're mine. Wait, inheritance?
Stephen suddenly looked confused.
By selling those items, you've effectively accepted the inheritance, which is called tacit acceptance. This means you can't renounce the inheritance anymore,
I explained. What? Stephen's mouth was half open, making him look completely foolish. Next to him, Sabrina wore the same expression, and I secretly thought they were a perfect match. Immediately, Sabrina snapped.
I told you not to rush things.
She started blaming Stephen, trying to save herself. Stephen stood there in a daze, staring up at the sky. Taylor and I couldn't help but laugh at their misfortune. When I glanced over, Aurora was also watching with a satisfied look on her face. So were our relatives. No wonder. Stephen and Sabrina had barged in without considering the situation, causing a commotion with their constant picture-taking. Everyone in the venue was on our side.
Well then, how about you just leave?
Taylor and I called the staff, who then forced Stephen and Sabrina out of the venue. Even as they were being dragged away, they continued to hurl insults at each other. After that, Stephen and Sabrina tried to avoid taking on any debt and considered hiring a lawyer. But bad luck seemed to follow them. Their house, of all things, caught fire from a nearby blaze and was partially burned down. While the roof was still intact and it wasn't entirely uninhabitable, the smoke smell made it far from a peaceful living environment. Rebuilding the house would cost money. Hiring a lawyer would also require funds. Expenses just kept piling up. So, Sabrina thought of asking her family for financial help. However, her parents were in the midst of discussing a mature divorce. Apparently, her dad's domineering ways had pushed her mom over the edge. Her mom had decided she wanted to live a free life and opted for divorce. As a result, Sabrina's plea for help was met with,
"You're a grown adult. Don't rely on parents who are about to split up."
With no one left to turn to, Stephen and Sabrina had no choice but to take on Trevor's debt and inherit the only family home that hadn't been part of the earlier inheritance. Why didn't Aurora inherit the family home during the lifetime gift? The family home had begun to sink at that time, causing the house to gradually tilt. Of course, while Aurora was alive, it wasn't uninhabitable. However, the tilted house affected her inner ear, causing dizziness and other health issues frequently. Aurora injured her leg due to falling from dizziness. When I received the lifetime gift from Trevor, he asked me to live with Aurora after he passed away. Therefore, after the funeral, she has been living with my husband and me. In short, not only the debt but also the family home was a negative inheritance. Sabrina often yells at Stephen, saying,
"I wouldn't have to pay off the debt if I hadn't married you."
If she's so unhappy, she should just divorce him, but with her parents divorced, she has no one else to rely on and clings to Stephen. More than anything, she hates the idea of having a divorce in her history. She probably thinks it will tarnish her record. Being overly concerned with appearances can make life tough. Thus, Stephen and Sabrina became a couple in name only, paying off debt in the tilted house. I wouldn't want to live that kind of life. How terrifying. Meanwhile, Taylor and I, who had been childless for a long time, found out I was pregnant soon after Aurora started living with us. Could she be a stork? We spent the next 10 months thinking that, and finally, we had a healthy baby boy. He loves Grandma and is a kind-hearted person. Moreover, he's so smart that he easily understood the stock trading Taylor jokingly taught him. Of course, we haven't let him actually trade as it would be problematic if he lost money. To our surprise, his food preferences are remarkably similar to Trevor's, making us wonder if he's Trevor's reincarnation. Well, it's probably just a coincidence, but nevertheless, I sometimes think that while Stephen and Sabrina were punished, some mysterious happiness came to our home. I got my mistress pregnant. Let's get a divorce.
So, this woman you've been seeing, she's pregnant now? I'm guessing your little affair didn't just start a month ago, did it?
We've been together for about a year now. I guess you could call it an affair. I didn't want to hide it and risk causing more drama later on, so I'll pay the alimony for an affair-based divorce. I laughed bitterly. I see. So, all those late nights at work and solo weekend outings weren't just to escape taking care of Lizzie, but also to meet up with your mistress. That's right. I had been left to shoulder the burden of caring for Lizzie, my mother-in-law, after she was diagnosed with dementia. It was a challenging situation on its own, but then my husband disappeared for a month without a word, only to return suddenly with his mistress in tow. To make matters worse, he brazenly declared his infidelity and referred to his mistress as his lover right in front of me. The term wasn't inaccurate, but I couldn't help but wonder if his mistress would be angered by such a blatant label. To my surprise, she simply smiled at me in silence. It was eerie, the way she grinned after being called a mistress. Was she that desperate to marry my husband? Well, if she wanted him that badly, she could have him. Fine, but from now on, Lizzie's care is your responsibility, I stated firmly.
What? Caring for her is your job, isn't it? You quit your job, so you don't have an income. I'll give you some money, so just keep taking care of that demented old hag. I'll pay extra, so handle the housework too. If you expect me to come to this house, does that mean you two will be living here? That's not going to work, because this house is going to be gone soon.
They had no idea what was coming. I hoped my husband's mistress would suffer plenty after getting her hands on my husband. And I wanted my husband, oblivious as he was, to thoroughly regret leaving me. My name is Adele. A 50-year-old company employee married to pay, who also works for a company. We have a daughter, Anita, who recently graduated from college, got a job, and moved out on her own. Our child-rearing days were officially over. Looking back, despite the various struggles, those memories were all precious to me. With our daughter out of the house, I thought Pei and I would continue working while enjoying a relaxed life together as a couple. But then, the unthinkable happened. I told you I was worried about leaving her alone, I sighed, exasperated.
It's fine now. She's safe and sound, isn't she?
We had rushed to the hospital after receiving a call that Lizzie had collapsed. My husband was now voicing his frustrations to Lizzie, who lay sleeping on the hospital bed. Apparently, Lizzie had suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. Although she managed to survive, the after effects left her with vascular dementia.
I can't take any more of Mom's selfish demands.
I nodded in agreement.
You're right. Let's start making arrangements right away.
At that moment, my husband and I decided to move in with Lizzie without her consent. Lizzie was already 80 years old and had been living alone for the past 5 years, ever since my father-in-law passed away. When my husband's father died, we had suggested that Lizzie move in with us, but
I'm not going to live with you,
she had declared stubbornly.
I'm finally on my own, so let me live my life freely. I'm finally on my own, so let me live my life freely.
But we're worried about what might happen to you, Lizzie, I had pleaded.
What do you mean? What might happen? Don't treat me like some helpless old lady. Sure, I've got one foot in the grave, but I can still take care of my own house,
she had retorted. Don't say things like that.
I absolutely refuse to live with you, and that's final, Lizzie had insisted.
We had persisted in suggesting the idea of living together, but no matter what we said, Lizzie remained adamant about not wanting to cohabitate. As a result, my husband and I had relented and decided to visit Lizzie's home as often as possible and keep in touch with her regularly. However, even that seemed to displease Lizzie.
Having you come over to my house all the time like this is really unsettling, she had complained.
Please don't say that. We'll leave right away, I had reassured her.
If you're just going to leave right away, then there's no need for you to come in the first place. Are you after my valuables or something? Or are you here for the inheritance? There's no money in this house, you know,
she had accused. That's not why we're here at all. Whenever we went to check on Lizzie, she would often yell at us. The Lizzie of the past had been so kind, helping out a great deal when our daughter was young, calling to check if we were having any troubles with child rearing or our marriage. But after her husband passed away, she had changed a little. Now that Lizzie had collapsed, we could no longer indulge her selfish whims. In Lizzie's hospital room, as she slept, my husband and I exchanged glances, confirming in each other's expressions that our resolve was firm. We decided to force the issue of living together, no matter how much venom Lizzie might spew at us later. I'm sorry. This is going to be a bigger burden on you.
It's fine, really. I'm only 50, so if I put my mind to it, I'm sure I can find another job,
I reassured him. As we made preparations to move into my in-laws' home, my husband kept apologizing to me repeatedly. From now on, I would be quitting my job to devote myself to supporting Lizzie, who had developed dementia. This was my way of repaying Lizzie for taking care of me in the past. It was also an apology for not having forced the issue of living together sooner, before things had come to this. You came. Thank you. I'm sorry for causing you trouble, Lizzie said, her voice weak. Not at all. We're the ones who will be imposing on you, I replied, trying to sound cheerful. I had expected Lizzie to spew venom at me once we started living together, but to my surprise, she welcomed me warmly. The atmosphere was reminiscent of the kind Lizzie from the past. At this rate, I thought we could manage living together without any issues. However, problems began to surface in unexpected ways. Lizzie was more energetic than we had imagined. She could walk on her own, so she didn't need much assistance around the house, and her speech was clear. The content of her conversations, though, was a bit problematic.
The flower field over there was so beautiful. Let's go there together next time, Adele. Sounds good. Let's go together with pay,
Lizzie suggested, sipping her tea as she recounted a day trip she claimed to have taken yesterday. It seemed she had enjoyed it so much that she wanted to take me along. However, the day trip Lizzie was referring to had taken place not yesterday, but 20 years ago. She had mistaken it for a recent trip and was sharing her travel memories with me. I continued to listen to Lizzie's stories with a smile, without correcting or drawing attention to her confusion. It appeared that Lizzie's dementia had made it difficult for her to distinguish between past and present memories. As a result, she would occasionally talk about events from decades ago as if they had happened recently. If that were the only issue, I thought it wouldn't be a major problem since I could simply listen to her stories. However, I quickly realized that this assumption was naive. Having you come over to my house all the time like this is really unsettling. Can't you leave soon? Lizzie grumbled. Lizzie, we're already living together. I reminded her gently.
I'm not going to live with you. Don't say such nonsense,
she retorted, stomping off to her room. In situations like this, pressing the issue would only escalate Lizzie's anger, so I had no choice but to wait until she calmed down. Worried that Lizzie might do something dangerous, I would occasionally check on her room while going about my household chores. Lizzie acted on her thoughts. Whether they stemmed from past memories or ideas that popped into her head at the moment, so caution was necessary.
Where are the forks? Lizzie asked, rummaging through the drawers. Forks? Why are you looking for forks? Are you going to eat something? Of course I'm looking for them because I'm going to eat, Lizzie snapped. But didn't we just have dinner?
It's for the cake roll after the meal, right? I'll bring it out now. I interjected, hoping to defuse the situation.
Wow, you understood that so well. I have no idea what Mom is trying to say anymore.
She mentioned she was looking forward to it this afternoon, so it was easy to figure out this time. But there are times when even I don't understand. I admitted.
Still, that's impressive. The other day, I couldn't understand what Mom wanted, and she threw a fit. It was quite troubling.
I brought out 3 slices of cake roll, and we enjoyed the after-dinner dessert as a family. However, my husband quickly finished his portion and retreated to his room. After dessert, I listened to Lizzie's cheerful chatter as usual. Previously, my husband would join me in listening to Lizzie's stories, but now he was trying to keep his distance from her. At first, my husband had been proactive about caring for Lizzie, but it seemed more challenging than he had anticipated, and he gradually left everything related to Lizzie up to me. To distance himself from Lizzie, he started coming home late from work and going out alone on his days off. I had quit my job to support Lizzie. However, I realized that if things continued this way, my husband might think it was okay not to help at all, so I finally decided to confront him. Don't you think you could listen to Lizzie's stories a bit more? You're starting to leave everything to me, and it's like you're avoiding your mother, I said, trying to keep my voice calm.
That's not true. I'm just tired from work and don't want to get caught up in Mom's long conversations or hysterics at home. That's the problem. I'm not asking you to help more. I just want you to lend a hand a little, and I don't want you to dump everything on me like this.
I explained, my frustration growing. Fine. You don't have to get hysterical too, my husband muttered, walking out of the living room as if to escape from me. I regretted not phrasing it better. But at least I had gotten a commitment from him. I thought this meant he wouldn't completely abandon Lizzie's care to me. That was supposed to be the case, but my husband tried to fulfill his promise in a way I hadn't imagined. I'm sorry. You just started working, and it must be tough for you. I apologized to my daughter as I handed her a cup of tea. It's okay, since it's only occasionally. And I want to see Grandma too. Anita reassured me, taking the tea to Lizzie and starting to listen to her stories in my place. While they chatted, I went out shopping. Anita started coming home and helping out in various ways, which was a great relief for me. However, this wasn't something I had asked for. Oh, Anita. You're here. You're always such a big help.
What were you thinking, going out alone again? If you're here, then I'm not needed, right? That's not the issue, Anita exclaimed.
When my husband, who had been off work and out playing since the morning, returned home, our daughter scolded him as soon as she saw his face. Watching my daughter scold my husband, I couldn't help but sigh. The reason Anita started coming home was that my husband had asked her to help out a bit because caring for Lizzie was challenging. I had only wanted my husband to help a little, but he had delegated that small amount of assistance to our daughter. Our kind-hearted daughter had agreed to come, but when it came down to it, my husband wasn't helping at all. It was only natural for Anita to be angry. However, no matter how much Anita scolded him, my husband's attitude didn't improve. If anything, it seemed to worsen the situation, as he thought everything was fine now that Anita was helping, and he completely avoided anything related to Lizzie. While I was grateful for Anita's assistance, it was only occasional. In the end, I found myself caring for Lizzie almost entirely on my own.
You hid my clothes, didn't you?
Lizzie accused me, her eyes blazing with anger.
I didn't do anything like that. You probably forgot where you put them. Shall we look for them together?
I offered, trying to keep my voice calm and soothing.
Don't give me that innocent act. What a horrible person you are. Do you enjoy bullying an old woman that much? You wicked daughter-in-law.
Lizzie spat, her words dripping with venom. About a year had passed since I started taking care of Lizzie by myself. If you looked at it day by day, the stress of caring for Lizzie wasn't that significant. However, when it continued for a year, the stress gradually accumulated. Moreover, caregiving wasn't the only source of my stress.
Hey, keep it down. Don't make me raise my voice.
If anything, the main cause of my stress was him. My husband still didn't lift a finger to help and had completely dumped everything related to Lizzie on me. I had tried to keep him informed about important matters, but...
You know how Lizzie called the real estate agent on her own and tried to sign some contract?
I began, hoping to discuss the issue with him.
You told them she has dementia, so they invalidated it, right?
Yes, but to prevent the same thing from happening again. I persisted, trying to convey the gravity of the situation.
I'll pass on that kind of troublesome talk. Taking care of Mom is your job.
My husband cut me off, fiddling with his phone as he walked out of the living room. I had reached a point where he wouldn't even listen to me. This had been going on for a year, and I was understandably feeling quite down. I was still managing for now, but at this rate, my mental health might eventually deteriorate. One day, as I was worrying about this, an incident occurred that severely drained my emotional reserves.
I'm telling you, it wasn't me. Stop making false accusations. It was you, wasn't it? I saw you do it. Fix it right now.
Lizzie demanded, her tone equally furious.
That's obviously impossible. Have Adele take you to the optician tomorrow or something.
As I was cleaning up after dinner, I suddenly heard my husband and Lizzie's angry voices. I hurriedly stopped washing the dishes, wiped my wet hands, and headed to the living room.
What's going on?
I asked, trying to assess the situation.
She's saying I broke her reading glasses. You broke them right in front of me.
Lizzie insisted, her eyes narrowed in accusation.
Stop making false accusations, you demented old hag. Hey, what kind of way is that to talk?
I admonished him, shocked by his callous attitude.
Shut up! I can't take this anymore. Staying in this house is nothing but a source of stress.
My husband yelled, roughly shoving my shoulder to force me aside as he stormed out of the house. The pain in my shoulder from his push and the unreasonable words he had hurled at me left me unable to muster the energy to chase after him or call out to him. I simply watched his retreating back, feeling utterly defeated.
It was him who broke them,
Lizzie insisted, her voice trembling with anger and frustration.
I understand. Let's go to the optician tomorrow. For tonight, please bear with it without your reading glasses,
I said, trying to placate her.
I'm always causing you trouble. Thank you,
Lizzie said, her tone softening.
What are you saying?
This is only natural, I reassured her, my heart aching at her vulnerability. As I cleaned up the broken reading glasses from the table, I listened to Lizzie's story. Lizzie sometimes got angry out of nowhere or said things that didn't make much sense, but she also had moments when she reverted to the kind Lizzie I knew. I believed that it was this kind Lizzie's presence that kept me sane. That day, my husband, who had left the house, didn't return. Well, I thought he would come back eventually, so I didn't pay much attention to it. However, he didn't return the next day or the day after that. I got worried and called him several times, but he wouldn't pick up. About 2 weeks after my husband left the house, I finally received a message from him. It was just 6 characters long, saying he would return eventually. Since he said he would come back eventually, and he wasn't a child, I decided not to worry about it. Honestly, my husband had been the main source of my stress, so it was actually a relief to have him gone. After being married for over 20 years, this is what a marital relationship is like. However, another 2 weeks passed, and a month went by without my husband returning home. I started to worry again and was thinking about calling him when he suddenly came back.
Hey, I'm back. Come on, come in.
This is going to be our home now.
What? What do you mean?
When I greeted my husband at the entrance, I was perplexed by his attitude, as if nothing had happened in the past month. What confused me even more was the unfamiliar woman standing next to my husband. She looked to be in her late 30s, relatively young. My husband took the woman's hand and entered the house as if it were the most natural thing in the world, heading straight for the living room. I was so taken aback that I froze at the entrance. A few seconds later, I came to my senses and hurriedly followed my husband and the woman. When I arrived at the living room, my husband and the woman were sitting on the sofa as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I stood in front of my husband, demanding an explanation.
What do you mean, this is going to be your home? Where have you been for the past month? And who is this woman?
I asked, my voice rising with each question.
Don't bombard me with questions like that. But I guess one answer will suffice for all of them,
he said, his tone dismissive. I had intended to intimidate my husband, but he didn't seem to be listening at all. Instead, he had an eerie smile on his face, and I had a bad feeling about what was to come.
I got my mistress pregnant. Let's get a divorce,
he said, his words hitting me like a ton of bricks. My husband's words made me feel dizzy, and I thought I might collapse. I had a vague suspicion, but it seemed the woman was indeed his mistress. He must have been staying with her for the past month. Was he getting carried away with the idea of remarrying a younger woman? Or was he elated that he had gotten a woman in her late 30s pregnant at his age of over 50? He was calling his mistress his lover right in front of her. The term wasn't incorrect, but wouldn't the mistress get angry at being called that? That's what I thought, but the mistress just smiled at me in silence. Despite being called a mistress, she was smiling. It was quite eerie. Did she want to marry my husband that badly? If she was fine with a husband like him, she could have him. She could have my husband and suffer to her heart's content. My ignorant husband would also deeply regret leaving me, I thought. My husband and his mistress had smug expressions on their faces, as if they had one. They probably intended to kick me out of this house and live here together with their future child. If they wanted a divorce, that was fine, but before that, there were several things I needed to confirm with my husband.
That woman is pregnant, right? Then your relationship couldn't have started just this past month, could it?
I asked, my voice steady.
We've been together for about a year now. This would be considered an affair, right? I don't want to hide it and risk causing trouble later, so I'll pay the alimony for an affair.
He said, his tone almost boastful.
I see. So, coming home late from work and going out alone on your days off weren't just to escape from caring for Lizzie, but also to meet that woman.
I concluded, piecing it all together.
That's right. Actually, about Mom's reading glasses, I really did break them to get away from home for a few days. I was planning to come back in about 3 days, but during that time, her pregnancy was discovered. So, after discussing what to do, we decided to have you leave.
He explained, as if it were the most reasonable thing in the world.
Fine, then please take care of Lizzie's caregiving from now on,
I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. My husband's incredibly childish words and actions made me lose any desire to have a discussion, so I decided to leave the scene quickly. However, I was made painfully aware that my husband's immaturity exceeded my imagination.
Huh? Caregiving is your job, isn't it? You quit your job. You don't have an income, right? I'll give you some money, so keep taking care of that demented old hag. I'll pay extra, so take care of the housework too,
he demanded, his tone dismissive. Hearing my husband's words, I felt like his mistress's smirk grew stronger. Seeing her expression, I kind of understood why she didn't get angry when my husband called her his mistress.
What's your name? I asked, turning to the woman. It's Kendall, why?
She replied, her tone almost bored.
Kendall, I'm sorry to ask, but what's your job?
I inquired, trying to keep my composure.
I'm a part-timer, why?
She said, her expression guarded.
Will you continue working after marrying my husband?
I pressed, needing to know.
I've been told I can just become a housewife, so I'm planning to quit, why?
She responded, her tone defensive. It seemed my hunch was correct. My husband was trying to make me take care of Lizzie and do the housework even after our divorce. He said he would pay me, but he probably only intended to give me a small allowance. If I were to take care of the house, what would his mistress do as a housewife? He probably told her she wouldn't have to do anything. His mistress could live comfortably, so she must have decided to marry my husband. Even if I left the house, with my husband's family home, she could raise her child with peace of mind and rely on my husband's money. That must have been good enough for her. My husband probably thought that having a young wife and a cute child would be enough. However, the life they envisioned in this house would never come to pass.
If you expect me to come to this house, does that mean you two will be living here? That's not going to work, because this house is going to be gone soon. What are you talking about? This house is going to disappear? That's right. Lizzie is planning to sell this house and use the money to enter a nursing home.
I explained, my voice calm and steady.
Sell the house? Isn't that what that demented old hag was trying to do when she contacted the real estate agent on her own? I thought we talked to the real estate agent and had the contract nullified. Don't tell me she tried to proceed with the contract again after that? But I can't imagine that someone with dementia could properly handle contract discussions. Last time, the real estate agent contacted us to confirm she was trying to proceed with the contract on her own, so we found out. This time, I handled the procedures on her behalf.
I stated matter-of-factly.
The house should be in Lizzie's name. There's no way you could easily sell the house on her behalf. If you're going to lie, at least make it more believable.
It's not a lie. I've become Lizzie's legal guardian. So, I've gained the authority to manage her assets on her behalf.
I can sell real estate, sign contracts for nursing care services, and even discuss the division of inheritance.
I explained, watching the realization dawn on his face.
So that means you can do anything on Lizzie's behalf?
Not anything, but roughly speaking, yes. I confirmed, nodding my head.
Why are you the one handling such important procedures? If someone is going to become her legal whatever, it should be me, her son. Remember about 6 months ago when Lizzie contacted the real estate agent on her own? I tried to consult with you to prevent the same thing from happening again. But you said you'd pass on such troublesome discussions and that Lizzie was my responsibility, dumping it all on me. So, I proceeded with the procedures.
I reminded him, my voice tinged with frustration. Realizing that I was in a position to sell the house on Lizzie's behalf, my husband seemed quite flustered. It was only natural, given that he had just found out the house he planned to live in with his mistress would soon disappear. In an attempt to protect the house he intended to live in, my husband appeared to be considering his words for a counterattack against me. Sweat beaded on his forehead. No matter how much he racked his brain, there was no way he could retaliate against me, but after a while, my husband's expression suddenly changed. Let's hear what he came up with.
You sold this house to create money for Lizzie to enter a nursing home, right? Is that Lizzie's intention? Lizzie has dementia. I can't believe she's capable of expressing such intentions. Isn't this just you using the rights of being her legal whatever because you don't want to take care of Lizzie? You're planning to put Lizzie in a nursing home for your own sake. What a terrible person you are.
Pei accused, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. I thought my husband had noticed something important. However, the conclusion he reached was worth 0 points.
Lizzie sometimes talks about past memories as if they were current memories, right? You wouldn't know because you've been avoiding Lizzie, but there have been times when she's reverted back to the Lizzie from before we started living together. During those times, Lizzie told me various things. Remember how she opposed living together and had a cold attitude towards us after your father passed away? It seems she didn't want to interfere with our married life. So, she had originally planned to sell the house and enter a nursing home, but she tried to endure until the very end because the house was filled with memories of your father. Then, she collapsed from a cerebral hemorrhage. So, when she contacted the real estate agent on her own before, her memories from that time probably resurfaced, and she thought she had to contact the real estate agent. So, I'm respecting Lizzie's past intentions and selling the house on her behalf, making preparations for her to enter a nursing home.
I clarified, my voice firm and resolute.
Why didn't you tell me about selling the house and putting Lizzie in a nursing home?
Pei demanded, his voice rising with anger.
Didn't you say Lizzie was my responsibility and dump everything on me? So, I thought it would be fine to tell you once all the preparations were finalized. But when push came to shove, you left the house for a whole month and were unreachable. What else could I do?
I countered, my patience wearing thin. Understanding that he wouldn't be able to live the life he had imagined with his mistress, my husband's shoulders slumped in defeat. However, it seemed he hadn't lost hope for the future yet.
Well, if Lizzie enters a nursing home, that means we won't have to take care of her. And even if I have to pay alimony, I can still divorce you. Then I can marry Kendall. I was shocked about the house disappearing, but it doesn't seem like that big of a deal for me.
Unfortunately, I was about to extinguish that hope as well.
I think you two will have a tough time ahead with money and other things, but do your best.
I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm.
What? Money and stuff? Isn't the money for Lizzie to enter the nursing home coming from selling this house?
Actually, this house is old, so we have to demolish it and sell just the land. The demolition costs are surprisingly high. Well, after subtracting the demolition costs from the money we get from selling the land, it'll be around $80,000. So, that $80,000 will go to Lizzie, right? Geez, don't scare me like that. That's a lot of money coming in, isn't it? Well, about the nursing home Lizzie is planning to enter, we ended up choosing a pretty nice place. Just the initial move-in fee is around $30,000. I revealed, bracing myself for his reaction. Even so, there's still $50,000 left, right? The monthly fee for the nursing home is $3,000. Said, watching his face fall. $3,000? With that, $50,000 will be gone in just a little over a year. We'll need money for things other than paying the nursing home, so it might be gone in less than a year. But don't worry. There are various programs available, so Kendall, I'll leave the rest to you.
What? Me? I don't know what to do if you tell me that all of a sudden. Hey, you know what to do, right? Do it for me.
Kendall pleaded, her eyes wide with fear.
I don't know anything either. I've been dumping everything about Mom on Adele until now. More importantly, why did you choose such an expensive nursing home?
If Lizzie enters a nursing home, I can work again, right? So, I was planning to find a new job and pay the fees myself after using up Lizzie's money. I've already found a job and will start working next month. Since my career break was only about a year, I found one quickly. But I don't need to save money for Lizzie anymore, right? I said, my voice calm and collected. No, we're having a child, and we'll have to rent a house since this one is disappearing, and there's alimony for you. $3,000 a month is impossible. Please. Can't you reconsider selling the house and the nursing home? No. Selling the house and the nursing home were already decided. By the way, the only way to cancel the legal guardianship midway is if the person's judgment ability recovers. I stated firmly, leaving no room for argument.
So, even if we get divorced, you'll be managing Lizzie's assets, right?
That's right. I'll protect the money from selling the house, so don't get any funny ideas. I warned, my tone stern. Realizing that the happy life he had envisioned with his mistress would not come to pass, my husband slumped in defeat once again. Seeing his reaction, his mistress also began to panic.
Wait, what does this mean? You said there's a house, and even though Lizzie has dementia, she'll croak in a few years because of her age, so we wouldn't have to take care of her that much, right? But now the house is being sold and will disappear, and Lizzie will use that money? And from what you're saying now, it seems like we'll have to deal with the high nursing home fees. This is completely different from what I heard, but you can afford to live like that, right? Kendall demanded, her voice shrill with anger. I'm sorry. The situation has changed. If possible, could you work? Don't mess with me. Build a replacement house right now.
Kendall yelled, grabbing my husband by the shoulders and shaking him violently. My husband's head bobbed back and forth limply, and I worried it might fall off at any moment. Even though we were planning to demolish the house, we would still be living here for a while, so it would be troublesome if my husband's head fell off. You can't live here anymore, so please leave. I said firmly, ushering my husband and his mistress out of the house as they continued to argue. Is someone here? Lizzie asked, entering the living room after hearing Kendall shouting.
I just sent away a persistent door-to-door salesman.
I lied, pretending the events of the past few minutes had never happened. After that, my husband and I got divorced. As planned, Lizzie sold the house and entered a nursing home. Also, after hearing about the affair, my daughter said she would never see her former father again. It seems that my ex-husband and his mistress broke up after that. As a result, my ex-husband not only has to pay me alimony for the affair, but also child support for the child that will be born with his mistress. My ex-husband was cut off by me and our daughter, and he was abandoned by his mistress, leaving him alone. Although he is alone, my ex-husband has a job, so he can live comfortably with financial leeway from now on. Or so one might think. My ex-husband has to continue paying child support and Lizzie's nursing home fees. If Lizzie enters a nursing home with fees that are too high, he may not be able to pay child support. The child about to be born is not at fault. Therefore, I changed Lizzie's nursing home to one with slightly lower fees. However, I haven't forgotten that my ex-husband didn't take care of Lizzie at all when she developed dementia, and that he said things like, "Demented old hag, and I'll only have to endure her for a few years until she croaks." As a form of forced apology to Lizzie, I put my ex-husband in a nursing home with fees that would make his life barely manageable. As Lizzie's legal guardian, who can also sign contracts for nursing care services on her behalf, I won't allow him to change the nursing home on his own. If he wants to live with Lizzie, I would agree to cancel the nursing home contract. However, that's only if he can take care of Lizzie while working. That would be difficult, so I want him to continue working hard for Lizzie and his soon-to-be-born child while living alone. Even after the divorce, I sometimes visit Lizzie at the nursing home with my daughter.
Adele, Anita, you came to see me. Thank you, I'm so happy.
Lizzie calls out to us in a loud voice when she spots us, hurrying towards us. Perhaps because the nursing home provides a comfortable environment, Lizzie seems to have become a little more energetic. At this rate, she will likely remain healthy for quite some time. According to the nursing home staff, Lizzie remembers me and our daughter, but when her son, my ex-husband, visits, she mistakes him for someone she's meeting for the first time. Having been forgotten even by his mother, my ex-husband has truly become alone. I also started living alone after the divorce, but my situation is different from my ex-husband's. I can still visit Lizzie and talk with her like before, and I can meet my daughter. I also have a job, so I'm not struggling financially. Although I'm living alone, my life is fulfilling.
Risa, while you were away, I moved my parents' stuff into our house. What? What do you mean by that?
While I was on a trip, my husband Polly had moved his parents' moving boxes into our house without asking. And on top of that, I received unbelievable treatment from Polly. "You should not come back anymore." Polly doesn't want me to come back home anymore. Even though this house is where our family has always lived, Polly wants to kick me out and live with his parents. However, I had anticipated being kicked out by Polly and easily retorted, "Okay, I'll move out on my own." I sought advice from my dad, Mike, and took a certain action. First, I sent an email to someone and made a plan. I returned to America with Mike. And then, I came back to our house. I started to execute the plan as intended. Polly, who had been naively thinking he could live with his parents, was surprised by the unexpected turn of events. Actually, the plan I had made with Mike was, my name is Risa. I am a 45-year-old dietitian working in a hospital. Originally, I was supposed to follow in Mike's footsteps, but inheriting my mom's love for cooking, I became a dietitian. However, my beloved mom passed away before I graduated from college. After that, Mike started working in France, so we sold the house I was born and raised in, and I started living alone in an apartment. Being plain-looking since childhood, I've always been inconspicuous wherever I go. Moreover, attending girls' schools from middle school to university, I had no encounters with men, and I had never had a boyfriend. However, I was fortunate to meet good people wherever I went, and after graduating from college, I got married. At that friend's wedding, I met my current husband, Polly, who was 3 years older than me and a friend of the groom. He seemed like the type who would be popular with the ladies. Luckily, or perhaps coincidentally, he had just broken up with his girlfriend. His ex-girlfriend was a nurse, and it seems they broke up due to misaligned schedules and night shifts. When I mentioned that I was a dietitian with early mornings and few holidays, he was very pleased. However, at that time, I was busy studying for the national exam for registered dietitians, so I was busy on weekends. Even so, he was kind enough to send me messages, saying, "I miss not being able to see you, but good luck with your studies." Feeling a sense of destiny with him, I thought I'd like to marry him if I passed. And on the day of the exam results, he invited me out to celebrate my passing that night.
Congratulations on passing.
This is how I feel, would you accept it? What he handed me was an engagement ring. He proposed to me right then and there. Overjoyed as if my passing was his own, I tearfully said yes right away. And so, our married life began. At first, we thought about living in an apartment, but with Mike's help, we bought our own home. I was looking forward to a happy life from now on, but after getting married, I started to feel a sense of discomfort around Polly. Thinking it was because I had no experience with men, I assumed it would be okay once I got used to it. However, one day, when Polly was looking at my pay stub, he made a comment that made me do a double take. "What's this?" I thought dietitians, being professionals, would earn more. "I'm disappointed." "What?" "Well, I just started working, and we're both working, so an income of around $200,000 should be fine, right?" I retorted, feeling somewhat offended. It's not like I got married to be supported by my husband, but being told my salary was low didn't feel good. Yet, Polly went on to insult my earnings further. I've been totally deceived. If I knew the income was this low, I would have asked before getting married. A nurse would have earned more. Polly must have been talking about his ex-girlfriend. It's one thing to complain about my earnings, but comparing me to his ex-girlfriend is unforgivable. Indeed, nurses receive night shift allowances and holiday pay. In comparison, my salary is lower because I have fewer early mornings and holiday shifts. However, I have my own side of the story to tell. I happened to see Polly's pay stub the other day, and it turns out he earns even less than I do. Yet, I thought we wouldn't struggle with our combined incomes, so I didn't say anything. I tried to gently break it to Polly, not wanting to hurt his pride. "Well, it seems like you have it tough too, so I guess you were hoping for a bit more from my salary. Sorry for not meeting your expectations." "That's right. I work for a small company, and my salary is really low, so I wanted to marry a professional woman to achieve financial stability." I only meant to cheer him up with what I didn't even believe myself, but I never thought Polly would take it seriously. Before we got married, he was happy that my work hours were regular, but after we got married, he complained about my low income as if he had changed his stance. What kind of world does a man live in where he expects his wife's income to be higher than his? I was just dumbfounded by Polly's unreliable behavior. As soon as he knew about my income, Polly started looking down on me. Yet, he wouldn't hesitate to buy whatever he wanted without restraint. Even when I asked him to be a bit more frugal, he wouldn't listen at all.
"I've been spoiled by my parents since I was a kid, buying me whatever I wanted, so I can't change my attitude towards money that easily."
I couldn't say anything back to such a spoiled statement from Polly. It's no excuse to say that he was spoiled by his parents when he was a child at his age. The following year after we got married, we were blessed with a boy. I hoped that becoming a parent would change Polly, but his habit of spending recklessly didn't improve, even during childcare. It was always the same with him spending his entire salary. If it wasn't enough, he'd sneak money from my wallet without me noticing. While I was struggling to manage work and budgeting while raising our son, Cedric, Polly hardly contributed to childcare. As time passed, struggling through these tough days, Cedric is now preparing for his college entrance exams this year. Thanks to my careful budgeting, it looks like we can afford to send him to college. Cedric, understanding our financial situation, has been studying hard to enter a national university. Yet, Polly came up with a ridiculous idea. Because I bought a new car last year, the loan repayments are tough. Plus, there's Cedric's exams, right? So, I've decided to sell my parents' house and have them move in with us.
Wait, what are you saying? Suddenly living together like that, it's going to be a problem.
Why? Risa, you get along with my parents, right? If we live together, we'll get their pension and become wealthier. Indeed, I don't hate the idea of living with my in-laws. It's just that I didn't like Polly's way of making decisions on his own. In terms of finances, we've been managing wealth so far, so there shouldn't be a problem as long as we don't indulge in luxuries.
Why do you always decide everything selfishly? Even the new car, you bought it without consulting me. That's my car, so I don't need to consult you every time.
Seeing Polly's selfish behavior, this time, Cedric got furious.
Dad, enough is enough. When I go to college, I might come home late from part-time jobs or clubs. If grandparents Arnold and Rothy are living with us, it's going to be awkward, right? Why don't you discuss these things properly with Mom?
Cedric, coming out of his room all of a sudden and raising his voice, left Polly wide-eyed in surprise. But the next moment, Polly turned to me, lashing out as if he was taking it out on me.
Cedric talking back to me, his dad, like that is because of your poor parenting. Reflect on it.
Saying that, Polly locked himself in his room and didn't come out for a while. I was happy that Cedric stood up for me. However, I was worried that the current home environment would affect his exam preparations. Despite my worries, Cedric successfully passed his first-choice national university. But tired of living with Polly, Cedric decided to move out and start living on his own. He said he wants to try his best on his own without relying on his parents, even if it means working part-time. Even so, Polly continues to ignore both me and Cedric. Ever since it's been just Polly and me at home, we don't even talk though we're in the same house. It feels suffocating. During these days, feeling mentally drained, I called my dad Mike in France to seek advice. Mike, worried about me, suggested I come to France for a while. I thought I couldn't take a long break because of my job, but it seems my colleagues were worried about my pale complexion recently. After explaining the situation, I was allowed to take some time off. However, I wanted to keep my consultation with Mike a secret from Polly. So, I told him I was invited on a trip by a friend. I hoped that if I was away for a while, Polly might cool down a bit. But heading to Mike's, an entirely unexpected situation unfolded. Starting with a call from Polly while I was in France. Risa, I've moved my parents' stuff into our house while you were away.
What? What do you mean?
What do you mean, what?
I've been saying, haven't I? That I'd live with my parents. More than that, Dad and Mom are angry with you. They said a wife who spoils their son like you is the worst.
No way. I couldn't believe what Polly was saying. My in-laws shouldn't be the type to speak ill of me like that.
So, I've decided we'll live with my parents and me from now on. If you were here, it'd inconvenience my parents. After all, you're the strict wife who makes their son speak ill of them.
Polly must have badmouthed me to my in-laws. Maybe the part about them being angry with me was also a fabrication. Angry, I thought about shouting something back. But, to stay calm, I just said, "I'll call you back later," and hung up. Luckily, Mike was home, so I immediately shared the phone call's content with him. Mike, looking disgruntled, shook his head. Polly, really? Relying on his parents at his age. That's what I'm saying. I don't understand why I have to be the one kicked out. After a long discussion, Mike came up with a suggestion that excited me. I thought this would teach Polly a lesson. First, I contacted someone by email, then called Polly's mobile phone. "Polly, talking over the phone won't cut it, so let's discuss this when I get back from my trip." I said this calmly, but Polly, with a laugh in his voice, replied, "You shouldn't come back." Just as Mike advised, Polly didn't want me to return home. Expecting this, I retorted easily, "Okay, got it. I'll just move out on my own." Huh? Polly sounded taken aback by my unexpected response. But thinking I was just bluffing, he laughed and replied, "Move out? Where to, when you have nowhere to go?" "Oh, to the place I'm currently at." "What are you talking about? You're on a trip with friends. Wait, you're not with a man, are you?" Now he seemed to misunderstand that I was with a lover, so I decided to reveal the truth. "Well, if it's a man, it's indeed a man. But, you know, it's Dad." Mike's place." Polly sounded relieved. But he'd be surprised by the next part of the conversation. "Dad's living in a mansion in France now, so I've decided to live here too. That's why we're going to sell the house we've been living in." "What? What do you mean?" "Well, you should know, right? That house is in Dad's name, built for us. If I'm not living there, it's to be sold." "What? But Dad and Mom are here right now. What are you going to do?" That's what I said. It's no use talking over the phone. Polly, finally grasping the situation, hung up without saying anything else. He can't possibly imagine the further tragedy waiting for him upon my return to America. A week later, I returned home with Mike, where Polly was living with my in-laws. At the entrance, my in-laws greeted us with smiles. "Mike, it's been a long time." "Yes, I can't often return to America due to work. Risa has always been under your care." While Mike and my father-in-law Arnold were exchanging greetings, Polly quietly emerged. It seemed he hadn't yet informed them about the house sale. Looking awkward, Polly just bowed his head. "Polly, the movers are coming today to pick up the stuff. Have you prepared everything?" "All your stuff is already packed." "Oh, it's not just my things that are being moved out." "Huh? Do I have to move my things out today, too?" Polly's surprised shout caught Arnold's attention. "What's going on, Polly? Why are your things being moved out?" Polly, looking guilty, hesitantly explained the situation. Arnold became furious and started yelling at Polly. "You said this house was bought under your name with a loan so we could live together. Making your parents ashamed, unforgivable." Arnold's thunderous voice left Polly speechless. Then, the moving truck arrived. After my things were moved out, my mother-in-law Rothy came out to direct the movers. "Thank you for your hard work. Our stuff is prepared here, please take it." Rothy had neatly prepared all the household items, including Polly's. Seeing this, Polly was dumbfounded. "Mom? What's happening? Why are you packing Dad's stuff too? Where are you planning to take it?" Watching Polly panic and question Rothy, we all burst into laughter. "You've been completely fooled." "What? What's going on? Why is everyone laughing all of a sudden?" Indeed, this was all a plan to trick Polly, discussed in advance by everyone here. The first person I contacted by email from France was Rothy. Rothy had been worried about my tired appearance for some time. After repeatedly asking why, I ended up telling Rothy everything about Polly. Rothy was shocked, especially at the part where Polly blamed his extravagant habits on his parents spoiling him. Rothy tearfully apologized for her parenting in front of me, which made me feel guilty. But Polly's wasteful spending wasn't Rothy's fault. As I comforted Rothy, our bond deepened. For me, without a mom, Rothy became someone I could consult about anything. Mike was aware of my close relationship with Rothy. Thus, he suggested involving the in-laws in our plan. Rothy, without letting Polly know, had been looking for a new place for them to live with Arnold. Arnold's scolding of Polly was all an act. I nearly burst out laughing at their convincing performance.
Rothy, thank you for arranging the movers for me as well. Now, I can move to the house Dad built in France.
I'm sorry, Risa.
My son has caused you so much trouble.
Rothy, we agreed not to say that, didn't we? Rothy and I laughed together. Polly, unaware of how close I was with his parents, looked surprised. Mom, where are we moving to?
We've already sold our family home.
We've already arranged a new place for us. Polly seemed relieved at Rothy's words. But that relief would soon be short-lived.
So, it was like that. I worried for nothing. Then I'll just go there too, right?
What are you talking about?
That's a senior living apartment for Arnold to live in with someone else. Polly, you're not a child anymore. Find your own place to live.
As soon as Rothy said this, Polly's face turned pale.
That's impossible. I don't even have the money for moving, let alone find a new place.
Indeed, Polly had squandered his salary on hobbies and entertainment, leaving him with no savings. No matter how he struggled now, it was his own responsibility. Desperate, Polly looked at me with pleading eyes. I could guess what he was about to say.
By the way, Mike built quite a big house in France, right? I had no idea you were such a well-off lady. Listen, I'll do anything you say from now on, so could you take me with you to that house?
Suddenly speaking in a sweet tone, he was indeed trying to rely on me. I had no intention of indulging such naive thoughts and firmly stated my position.
I've been fooled by your kind words on occasion, but I can't forgive you anymore. You've barely contributed to our living expenses and have just been playing around. I don't want to be your wife anymore. I've already discussed this with Cedric on the phone yesterday, and we've decided to get a divorce. Cedric agrees it's for the best.
I vented the feelings I had been holding back, feeling a sense of relief. My in-laws seemed to agree, nodding deeply.
What am I supposed to do now?
Polly cried, tears in his eyes, but my decision was firm. I presented him with the divorce papers and demanded his signature. Yet, Polly stubbornly refused to sign. Seeing this, Arnold showed his anger again.
Polly, enough is enough. After all the trouble you've caused Risa, now you're thinking of relying on her parents' home. I'm ashamed to call you my son. That's right. I admit, I've spoiled you too much. But Polly, you're an adult now. Stop being so selfish and start living on your own.
Convinced by his parents' earnest persuasion, Polly shed tears.
What? Even Dad and Mom? Do I have no allies here?
Muttering so, Polly signed the divorce papers. He then arranged to store his belongings in a storage unit and left the house alone. Betrayed by the parents he thought were on his side, he was visibly shocked. However, the in-laws had decided to cut ties with Polly. Not just them. I also promised never to let Polly see Cedric again. This was a strong request from Cedric. He had always resented Polly for never acting like a father. With the divorce as an opportunity, Cedric wanted to sever ties with Polly. I thought it was for the best for Cedric. Rejected by his parents and disowned by his son, Polly must have lost the will to live. Having lost everything, Polly spent some time living in monthly rental hotels and internet cafes. But once he received his salary, he managed to move into an apartment where he could live alone. During the divorce, I gave Polly a small amount of money as part of our shared assets. It was practically nothing, but I wanted to avoid any future claims for money, given my financial situation. In essence, it was severance pay. However, once Polly had a bit of financial leeway, he started getting into partying. Why do I know this? Because Polly contacted me, saying,
"I'll find a woman with a good income and make you regret leaving me."
Initially, after becoming alone, Polly would contact me just to express his loneliness. But once he had money, his attitude became arrogant again. After some time, the communications from Polly suddenly stopped. I wondered if he had found a new girlfriend, but it turned out the situation was far more serious. According to the former in-laws, Polly had fallen for a nurse he met at a party. Despite not being reciprocated, Polly persistently pursued her. At worst, he even showed up at her apartment. As a result of his relentless stalking, he was reported and arrested in the act. The former in-laws, having intended to sever parental ties, were troubled by their son's scandal, feeling deeply sorry for them. Being a parent is tough. No matter how much you try to distance yourself, you're still responsible when something happens. Despite causing so much trouble for his parents, Polly seemed unrepentant. During the interrogation,
"It was true love,"
he kept insisting. This led to a judgment that he was not remorseful, and his release was delayed. Such a man is better off cooling his head in prison for a while. After all, a penniless man in his 50s chasing such ideals will only cause annoyance. Now, I live elegantly in a mansion in France with Mike. Still not accustomed to the environment and not fluent in French, I'm not working yet. However, I can't stay unemployed forever, so I'm attending French lessons. Once I'm proficient in the language, I plan to help out with Mike's company. As time passed, Cedric graduated from university. He then moved here to work at Mike's company. In fact, Mike had called him over with the intention of making Cedric his successor. It was lonely being apart from Cedric for 4 years, but now we can live together forever. This thought fills me with joy. Now that I've become quite fluent in French, I assist with Mike's company and work as a cooking class instructor locally. Though my marriage failed, my life in France is very fulfilling. Despite being in my mid-40s, this is an ideal environment to enjoy life. I've decided to forget my past self, who worried about being plain and unpopular, and live positively. After all, there's still so much more to come. Surely, Mom in heaven is watching over me.
A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?
Benjamin, my husband, punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is.
Hey! Stop it!
I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh.
If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, "Poor daddy, starving because of mommy." Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit my stomach.
I screamed almost like a shriek, and finally, Benjamin stopped his hand.
I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now.
Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up with content. And then, He froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said,
"This time, I won't let you make excuses." "Well, not that you'll need to."
"You. This has to be a lie. I won't let him get away with excuses this time. I'll expose his true nature for sure. My name is Evelyn, I'm 29. I work at an electronics manufacturer, but I'm currently on maternity leave, so I'm almost like a housewife. I say almost because there's a reason. I do some chores and participate in irregular remote meetings. That's the only thing I insist on. The reason is, I handed over the project I was involved in to my junior when I got pregnant. I wanted to know the progress, so I insisted on participating. But I hardly ever speak up, it's more like I'm just observing. Still, I was happy to participate and know how the project is progressing. But that's just working for free. It's a waste of time, you should quit. The one grumbling with dissatisfaction is my husband, Benjamin. He's 36, 7 years my senior. Originally, he was my boss at work. Benjamin, competent at his job, was always relied upon by those around him. Furthermore, I was struck by his kindness and guidance, and before I knew it, I was drawn to him. It was considered lucky to have married someone like Benjamin, and many envied us, but after we got married, he changed. Don't say things like that. My job is just doing odd jobs and attending meetings, you know? Sometimes, I'm just observing. That's a waste of time. If you have time like that, why don't you clean the room? I've noticed dust accumulating under the furniture lately. Benjamin pointed at the gap between the TV stand and the floor. That spot can't be cleaned without crouching down. Now in my last month of pregnancy, it's utterly impossible to crouch with this belly, making it hard to breathe just from walking. So, indeed, I've neglected cleaning in some areas. I do what I can, but I'm sorry.
Normally, a wife's parents would come over to help with the housework at a time like this.
But you don't have that, do you? Benjamin said this with a sigh. My heart ached. My parents died in an accident 10 years ago. It's been 10 years, but it still feels like just yesterday. Yet, Benjamin carelessly belittles me for not having parents like now. And I always ended up apologizing. I'm sorry for causing you trouble. Then, Benjamin would always smile with satisfaction.
You're lucky to have married such a generous man like me. I never thought I'd marry an ordinary woman with no special qualities like you, Evelyn.
This is how Benjamin satisfies his ego. It's a daily repetition of sarcasm and boasting. He wasn't like this before we got married. Maybe it's common for both men and women to change after marriage. Sadly, Benjamin has a very good public image, so when I complain to others, they don't believe me. I get irrelevant responses like, "You're just being spoiled," or "It's nice to have someone so reliable." I could have endured it if it were just as everyone says. I could just ignore it. But lately, I've been at my wit's end with Benjamin returning from work. When the doorbell rings from evening to night, that's the signal of his return. Even if I was in the middle of housework, I would stop everything and rush to the entrance. And while watching the door open, I'd hope, "Please, let Benjamin be in a good mood today." When he's in a good mood, it's just reports of the company's doing well or I landed a contract. The problem is when he's in a bad mood.
Arg, so annoying. Acting all high and mighty just because they're a client. Those outdated fools.
As soon as he enters the entrance, Benjamin is stomping around, angry. We welcome back. He throws his bag at me and heads to the shower, cursing me under his breath. This whole routine terrified me. When this continued day after day, I even considered divorce. I first talked to a coworker, but they didn't believe me. Benjamin? That's hard to believe. You're exaggerating. Look, you're pregnant and probably just tired, right? Maybe you need a change of scenery? It was as if they were saying I was the one being unreasonable. Sadly, I understand where my coworker is coming from. The Benjamin we worked with was perfect in everyone's eyes. Always smiling, gentle in his words and actions, and calm. It's hard to believe that he could change like this. I wouldn't have believed it myself in the past. Maybe it's just temporary. Perhaps he's just irritable because he's busy and tired. I decided to think positively. It's not like he's physically harmed me. Though my body tenses up when he throws things or yells, he's never hurt me. I'm sure someday Benjamin will be as kind as before. That's what I hoped and prayed. No one believes that Benjamin could change like this. But there was one person who might believe me. That was my uncle, Daniel. My grandparents live far away, and my parents have passed away. After the accident, I was left alone, but I had one relative I could rely on. That was my father's brother, Daniel. He had moved to New York before my father, so by chance, he lived close to our family. Daniel looks, honestly, intimidating. He's 6 feet 3 inches tall and well-built, so just standing there can be imposing. But on the inside, he's incredibly kind and wonderful. When I was young, Daniel would often play with me in place of my busy parents. Back then, I thought Daniel was unemployed. He spent that much time with me. I think he doted on me like I was his own daughter.
Actually, I was the first one to ever hold Evelyn, you know.
Daniel and my father would often joke and compete like that. So, after my parents passed away, it was Daniel who supported me. He took care of most of the arrangements while I was in a daze. When I couldn't even bring myself to eat, he'd make tasteless oatmeal or pasta that would fall off the fork with just a touch. It wasn't delicious, but I remember I ended up eating it anyway. It was also Daniel who found me a job when I dropped out of college after my parents' accident. I feel bad for using your connections. To my hesitation, Daniel kindly said, "Don't get it wrong, it's just an introduction. How you works from here on out is up to Evelyn. I won't know anything about it. What I couldn't repay to my parents, I want to repay to Daniel." That was my goal. I had endured living with Benjamin, who only spewed verbal abuse, but one day, Benjamin finally raised his hand to me. It might not have been intentional at first. I knew I had to be careful that day because Benjamin's mood was worse than usual. But I was also feeling unwell and didn't have the energy to deal with it. So, when Benjamin complained about everything, the dinner menu, my face, my expression, the housework, I accidentally muttered under my breath, "Ah, enough, so annoying." The moment those words left my mouth, I could feel the room freeze over. This is bad, I've done it now. I need to apologize quickly. I started to apologize immediately, but it was too late. A magazine flew right past my face. Benjamin, in his anger, threw it at me.
Hey! What did you just say? Did you just tell me, who's tired from work, that I'm annoying? Hey!
From there on, it was useless to say anything. Benjamin started throwing whatever was nearby, one after another. Fortunately, it seemed he still had some reason, as he only threw light or thin items. Having done it once, the barrier to doing it again must have lowered. From that day, even though he wasn't using much force, Benjamin started to raise his hand over trivial matters. Scared, I thought of consulting Daniel. Actually, Daniel works at the same company as us. He introduced me to this company because he could be more accommodating if it was his own company. Benjamin never mentioned Daniel, so he probably doesn't know we work for the same company. But I had introduced him before, so he was aware of Daniel as part of my family. I was sure Daniel would believe me. I had something like a conviction about it. But, unfortunately, Daniel was on an overseas business trip at the time. Concerned for me, "I can listen over the phone if that's okay," Daniel said. For a moment, I thought of leaning on him, but knowing Daniel, if he found out about my situation, he might fly back. That wouldn't be fair to the company or Daniel. Reluctantly, I decided to wait for Daniel's return. I tried consulting coworkers and friends, but no one believed me, as expected. Moreover, somehow, the fact that I was talking about Benjamin reached him. Benjamin then said, "I meant it as a form of affection." He apparently said this with a lonely smile. Everyone completely believed this excuse. As a result, I was treated as just a woman with an overactive imagination. One day, while I was working in the room as usual, Benjamin came in. Today is unusually a work-from-home day for Benjamin as well. I knew in advance because he told me.
"I'm hungry. Where's lunch?"
Benjamin said, almost like he was throwing the words at me. "Oh, just wait a bit. I'm working right now."
"Huh?"
Benjamin let out an annoyed tone. With that voice, I immediately understood. Here it comes. The usual thing. I braced myself in an instant, preparing mentally. Usually, it's an arm or a leg. And then, Benjamin, with an unpleasant smirk, approached me.
"A housekeeper who doesn't even cook is grounds for divorce, right?"
Benjamin punched me in the stomach. I don't think he put much force into it. But that's where my precious baby is.
"Hey! Stop it!"
I was so surprised by Benjamin's unexpected behavior that I overreacted. He had never laid a hand on my stomach before, no matter what. I curled up in the chair, trying to protect my belly with my arms, encircling it. Tears welled up in my eyes from fear and anxiety. Seeing this, Benjamin let out a cheerful laugh.
"If you don't like it, just make lunch already. See, even the kid is saying, 'Poor daddy, starving because of mommy.' Ouch! Please, please stop."
How can he do such terrible things? I'm his wife, and the child in this belly is his. I couldn't understand at all.
"I don't want to do this either, you know? But what can I do? It's because you won't make lunch. Right? Poor daddy, huh?"
Even as he spoke, Benjamin's hand didn't stop. He kept hitting my stomach over and over, relentlessly. Resisting was difficult while sitting in the chair. I could only focus on defending myself.
Okay, I get it. Just stop. Just don't hit the stomach."
Screaming almost like a shriek, Benjamin finally stopped his hand.
I'm tired. Just do as you're told from the start. Make it quickly, right now."
Satisfied with his own words, Benjamin looked up contentedly. And then, he froze as he looked at the computer screen in front of him. What? Somehow, I got off the chair, kept Benjamin at bay with scissors nearby, and said, "This time, I won't let you make excuses." Well, not that you'll need to. This has to be a lie. The one to respond to the flustered Benjamin, turning pale, was someone on the computer.
"I wish it were a lie. I never thought you could be such a despicable person."
The one holding his head on the screen was the manager. Other employees were also looking at this with faces of disbelief.
"No, that's not true. I didn't hear anything. That's right. I was framed. I was deceived."
Trying to ingratiate himself, Benjamin clung to the computer.
That sounds terrible. I told you, didn't I? I'm working, so wait a bit. I haven't lied or deceived anyone. So, then you should have clearly said you were in a remote meeting. Then I would have.
Benjamin started to say, but caught himself. He was about to say, then I wouldn't have hit you. Benjamin, who cares so much about his public image and how he's perceived by society. The cunning and sly Benjamin wouldn't even utter a harsh word at the company, let alone raise a hand. That's why no one believed me when I complained. I felt a sense of despair at that time. But then I thought a bit. If they wouldn't believe me, I needed proof. Knowing there was a remote meeting while Benjamin was working from home, I had secretly plotted to expose his true face. I just hadn't expected him to aim for my stomach. That was a lapse in judgment on my part.
Anyway, everyone at the company is a witness now. You can't talk your way out of this. I want a divorce. I don't want to see your face ever again. But, Evelyn, I can't without you.
As Benjamin let out a pitiful voice, the doorbell chimed. Trying to head there, Benjamin blocked my way, trying to stop me.
Wait! We're in the middle of talking. Is it okay to raise your voice like that? The computer is still connected, you know?
Ah. Distracted and flustered, Benjamin let me slip by him towards the entrance. But just before I could get away, he caught up and grabbed my arm.
Stop! Let go! This spot is out of view from the computer, perfect. Hey, we need to come up with an excuse together. Should we say it was a prank? That's the safest bet. It'll be more believable coming from you, so you tell everyone. No way! I'm tired of watching your face, being worked like a slave, and living in fear.
Help me. Just as I screamed inside, I heard a noise from the entrance, and then the door burst open, and someone entered. Seeing who it was, I collapsed on the spot in relief.
Are you okay, Evelyn? Daniel.
It seems Daniel was secretly participating in that meeting too. He must have rushed over immediately after seeing the video. It was fortunate that the entrance door was unlocked. Are you hurt? How's your stomach? Daniel rushed to my side and pulled me away from Benjamin as if rescuing me. Then, shielding me with his own body from Benjamin, he hid me behind his back. Thanks to Daniel's broad back, I couldn't see Benjamin anymore. Likely, Benjamin couldn't see me either.
Daniel, Evelyn's uncle, right? Long time no see.
Peeking around Daniel's back, I saw Benjamin trying to force a smile and nodding in greeting. Daniel straightened up and looked down at Benjamin. Being considerably taller, Daniel made Benjamin look very small and frail. Evelyn, can you stand? You should rest on that sofa over there. Ignoring Benjamin, Daniel supported me and moved to the sofa. Sitting down provided some relief. Benjamin tried to approach me, but Daniel stopped him with a threatening look. After you rest a bit, let's go to the hospital just to be safe.
That's an overreaction. It was just a little nudge. That's part of affection, a couple's touch.
How could anyone think that way about what happened?
You be quiet. We'll have a thorough discussion once we've confirmed that Evelyn and the baby are safe. Don't worry, the meeting was recorded.
So you saw that because you're with the same company. Benjamin made a fist in frustration and fell silent.
Evelyn, you married quite the man.
I felt sorry facing Daniel's stern look and sigh, unable to say anything. The hospital visit confirmed that the baby was fine. Relieved, I felt my whole body relax. Then, Daniel, Benjamin, and I decided to head to the company. Daniel said.
Think of the baby. Leave the rest to me.
But this was a matter between Benjamin and me. Even if it's Daniel, I couldn't leave everything to him. We could have postponed it to another day, but knowing Benjamin, the more time he had, the more likely he was to come up with something. Now in the last month of pregnancy, with labor possibly starting at any time, it was best to resolve this quickly. I am a mother. I have a duty to ensure this child can be born into a safe environment. Upon arriving at the company, we were immediately led to a separate room. Daniel must have contacted them in advance. The employees present at the meeting must have also given their testimonies. In the large conference room were the meeting members, Benjamin, Daniel, and me. I took my bag from Daniel and pulled out the divorce papers. I had gotten them from the municipal office a long time ago and kept them in my bag. Benjamin looked puzzled for a moment, but then forced a troubled smile. I admit I did things that could be misunderstood. It's my fault too, so I'll accept the divorce. I have no problem with the compensation in the divorce court, and I'll pay child support. Perhaps because he was in front of everyone, Benjamin seemed unusually understanding. His acceptance made the conversation progress smoothly. However, when we reached a certain point, Benjamin froze. You want me to resign or transfer? Yes. I plan to return to work after my maternity and parental leave are over. It wouldn't be good for either of us if you were still here. That's why. I actually want you to leave. Benjamin stared at me intently and nodded. I see. But what does the company think?
What are you trying to say? Not to boast, but I believe I'm a valuable asset to the company. I have good performance. No issues with interpersonal relationships. Plus, I have a wide network among peers and clients.
Indeed, the outwardly competent Benjamin could be considered an ace at the company. He was what you'd call a key player. He was so well regarded that it was said it was only a matter of time before he became an executive.
On the other hand, you, for better or worse, is just an ordinary female employee.
Oh, I'm not trying to belittle you.
Just stating the facts.
I understand.
Moreover, as a mother of a young child, inevitably you'll take more leaves.
You'll probably end up inconveniencing the company, coworkers, everyone. This was something I had considered since becoming pregnant. Without parents, I had no one to rely on. In any situation, I had to manage on my own. While it's an unavoidable circumstance, to the company, I might be seen as a troublesome employee. I couldn't help but understand what Benjamin was trying to say. He implied that the company would choose him, the valuable ace, over me, who brought the inconvenience of potential risks, even though he had caused this issue.
See? So the best thing is to forget all this and get along again. That's the best for the baby too.
No, I can't do that.
What?
Benjamin looked utterly astounded.
Just endure and accept it again? That's ridiculous. Nothing would change. Do you expect me to endure endless days of sarcasm, living like I'm in hell?
At my words, employees whispered among themselves, looking puzzledly at Benjamin. Especially the female employees glared at him coldly.
Well, sure, we had our disagreements as a couple. But it goes both ways.
That's both ways? The balance is off. I was always the one being hurt.
Benjamin seemed unable to hide his agitation against my counterattack.
You're like a completely different person. What happened to you, Evelyn?
That's right. I've been enduring until now. I had hoped that maybe you would change someday. But I never thought you'd lay a hand on our child. The onlookers' gazes sharpened even more. Benjamin forced an awkward smile, his forehead beading with sweat.
Evelyn, that's because... Getting back to the point, shall we leave it to the company to decide who should leave?
Oh, yeah. Perhaps convinced he would be chosen.
Then, I'll go ahead and submit these divorce papers now. From this moment, you and I are strangers. Wait, Evelyn, goodbye.
I wanted to get away from him as quickly as possible. With Daniel by my side, I submitted the divorce papers. Despite Benjamin's strange confidence, it was certain he would be the one to leave. Although it felt slightly underhanded, Daniel is, after all, the CEO of our company. With the CEO on my side, the outcome was clear.
It does feel a bit unfair, though.
Muttering this, Daniel furrowed his brows sternly.
What's wrong with that? The fault lies with that man. To think he doesn't even remember the face of his own company's CEO and yet dares to call himself a valuable asset. The nerve!
I vented a little to Daniel. Daniel was red in the face with anger. Thanks to our talk, I felt much lighter. So, on the drive back from the city hall, we talked eagerly about the arrival of my child. I had no more worries. Now, I could give birth in peace. A few days later, I gave birth safely. It was a beautiful baby girl. Daniel came to the birth as well, shedding tears like he was welcoming his own grandchild. From Benjamin,
I want to meet her too.
I received a message. Has he forgotten what he did before our child was born?
It's too dangerous for you to meet her.
I replied, keeping a safe distance. While I'd prefer to cut ties completely, I left WhatsApp open as an escape route to avoid provoking him. He sends updates almost daily. After being fired, he managed to find employment in the same industry. However, due to the nature of the industry, rumors about Benjamin had already spread.
Everyone's cold to me, and I can't find a girlfriend.
He lamented. According to a coworker,
I'll never meet someone as good as Evelyn again.
Benjamin reportedly regretted his actions. If that were true, he shouldn't have done what he did. Currently, Daniel and I are discussing names for the child. We're struggling to come up with a good one. Moreover, Daniel was already head over heels.
I'm not letting this child get married off.
Showing an incredible amount of adoration. Though my parents couldn't see their grandchild, I'm glad Daniel is happy. Someday, when my child starts to speak, I want her to call Daniel Grandpa. I'm sure he'll cry, despite his imposing frame. I'm looking forward to it.
The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave.
Carol, the president's daughter who became the head of the design department, said, I've been with this company for 40 years and have designed 90% of our flagship products, but she seems unaware of that. So, I decided to take action. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving. I said, and then wiped all my PC data and resigned. As a result, Carol faced an unexpected turn of events. I'm Victoria Simmons, 62 years old. I work in the design department of a stationery manufacturer. I've been here since I was a fresh graduate, for 40 years, and I'm still active even after retirement age. I strive not to be outdone by the younger ones. I lost my husband 10 years ago, and my daughter lives alone. It's hard to say this about myself, but I've designed 90% of the company's flagship products. Therefore, I believe I hold significant value to the company. Stationery is wonderful. It's about dreams. Designing for writing, drawing, painting, erasing, measuring, making each task functional and enjoyable. These designs cater to everyone, from schoolchildren to professionals. How long I can continue, no one knows. But since I love my job, I joke with the younger employees that I'll keep going until I can no longer stand. One morning, the President Kennedy, who I joined the company with, showed up at a meeting. It had been a while since he attended. He brought a woman with him.
Good morning, everyone. It's been half a year since I last saw all of you, hasn't it?
Victoria, you're looking well. Kennedy and I joined the company in the same year. He used to be in sales, and we often talked at internal product presentations. Unlike the typical arrogant son of a president, he's sincere and humble. It's been 10 years since he took over from the previous president.
Today, I've brought the replacement for the department head who recently left.
Kennedy encouraged the woman beside him to greet everyone. She stepped forward and greeted.
Hello, I'm Carol Kennedy. I look forward to dedicating myself to the future growth of our company. Please, let's work well together.
Everyone in the department was surprised. No one had expected the president's daughter to be appointed as the head of the department.
As you all may know, our company is planning to expand overseas starting this year. We sent Carol to study abroad for a long time for this reason. She will help us create designs that are globally competitive. Let's all unite in this effort.
After saying so, Kennedy left in good spirits. Wilson, one of the colleagues, approached me.
Victoria, what do you think about her? Carol, I mean. I've known Carol since she was a child. We've never spoken, but the president used to bring her to company recreation events. Haven't seen her in a long time, but she's grown into a fine young lady. I think the president wants to make use of her international experience. But whether she understands the design industry is another question. So, we'll see how she does, huh?
I could sense a hint of disdain for Carol in Wilson's expression.
Wilson, we just need to focus on our responsibilities.
Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. However, as it turned out later, Wilson's intuition was spot on. A month had passed since Carol took charge. We continued as usual, brainstorming new ideas for stationery and designing in front of our computers.
Everyone, I have something to say. Is that okay?
Carol said so and walked to the center of the room. She then started speaking.
We will start developing products for the international market next month, starting with UK. If things go well, we will establish a base in London and then expand to hub offices in various locations.
Wilson's eyes widened.
So, as a start, we will develop new products. The ideas and designs will be decided through an internal competition.
The strategy was to sell some of our existing products while simultaneously developing new ones. The release of the new products, both domestically and internationally. It was set for 6 months later. I had a question. Carol, is there a specific concept for the product development? Her face, which had been amiable until then, hardened.
The fact that I didn't mention a concept means it's the same as before. Simmons, you're our most veteran employee, right? I didn't expect such a basic question from someone like you.
I was taken aback by her unexpected response.
If I had to say, I don't want anything outdated.
With a composed face, Carol finished speaking and returned to her desk. The internal competition was held weekly. I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if, like Hollywood movies, American origin stationery could become popular worldwide? I kept searching for new product ideas. What's different from my younger days is that the number of ideas that come to mind decreases with age. However, the quality of each idea has certainly improved. So, I wasn't worried even if I didn't come up with ideas every week. But Carol seemed not to tolerate that.
In this past month, everyone has worked hard. We've had over 200 ideas, with Wilson contributing 20%. It's not just about quantity, especially since we don't know what the market expects. We need as many ideas as possible.
She was clearly speaking with me in mind. Unfazed, I gave Wilson, who was modestly giving a thumbs up, a secret wink.
Well, it can't be helped if nothing comes up. But, as professionals, is it acceptable? Only 5 ideas in a month might indicate you've run out of ideas after being in the business for so long. I don't understand that world, but it doesn't seem like you're trying.
She looked straight at me, without averting her eyes even once. After the meeting, Wilson came to me.
Thanks to you, Victoria. Your way of expanding associations was amazing.
Ideas just keep coming. But Carol is too blatant. It's really annoying. It's okay. It's true that not many ideas are coming out. But, has she seen your ideas? Just talking numbers here. 1 of yours equals 10 of ours. Does she understand that?
That's all right. Maybe the British won't like my ideas. The final judgment is by the users.
Another month passed. We narrowed down our ideas and designed about 50 specific products from them. None of my ideas were selected, but about 5 of my designs were nominated. Carol seemed displeased by that.
Today, a buyer from UK, Mr. Lee, will visit us. He's agreed to take over our agency there. We hope to decide today, but at least we want to narrow it down to about 5. Especially the younger ones, look forward to it.
In the afternoon, Lee arrived and headed to the conference room with Carol. They returned after about 3 hours.
Congratulations, Wilson. I think it will be one of your 3 designs.
Carol spoke to Wilson with a big smile. He looked surprised. Later, I heard that everyone thought one of my designs would be chosen. Thank you. But, are you sure? Shouldn't it be Victoria's?
That's fine. Mr. Lee liked it, and so did I.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Indeed, we can't match the sensibilities of the younger generation. Simmons, it's unfortunate, but that's how it is.
Carol said that with a spiteful look. That might be true. I have no hard feelings about Wilson being chosen. In fact, I'm genuinely happy for him. It's wonderful when my colleague makes their mark in the world. I spoke from the heart. Then, Carol's face flushed with anger.
That's so irritating. What's with this saintly act of yours? You can only come up with 4 or 5 ideas a month and still act so high and mighty. Do you think everyone respects you just because you've been here the longest?
Her words were unexpected. I never thought she saw me that way, but at the same time, my anger was ignited.
Excuse me, but how much do you actually know about design? Do you remember the process of selecting everyone's ideas and designs? None of the works you favored are left in the final selection. You lack a professional's eye. You don't understand our struggle.
At that point, she lost her composure.
Oh dear. To think you'd say such things to me. I'm a manager, you know?
She approached me. Her eyes bloodshot.
You're done here as of today. The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave.
I was surprised by her sudden change, but I felt no resistance to her command to leave. Though I thought her remark about being an older lady was uncalled for.
I understand. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving. But I'm worried about what happens next. What are you talking about? Worrying about what happens after you leave? Don't pretend to care. The department will rejuvenate, and the young energy will keep coming. It's all good.
She laughed triumphantly, looking as if her anger had subsided.
I'm relieved to hear that. I'll start right away.
I said emotionlessly and began clearing my belongings. There was nothing particularly important to keep or hand over, so I discarded almost everything. I saved my designs on my memory stick, wiped the PC data, yes, erased everything. I also cleared the shared memory on the internet.
Hey, Simmons, don't forget to submit your resignation. It's the rule.
Of course. After saying that, I immediately wrote my resignation letter and handed it to her. She remarked,
"Wow, that was quick,"
and took it with a refreshing smile. I tried to appear relieved, but I couldn't tell how she perceived it. Then, until the end of the day, I went around bidding farewell to my colleagues. That night, they hastily organized a farewell party for me. Surprisingly, it turned into a chorus of criticism and complaints about Carol. I became increasingly worried about the future of the design department. The next morning, I woke up to bright sunlight. It seemed I had gotten drunk last night, for the first time in many years, so much so that I couldn't remember when last I had felt this way. I had forgotten to close the curtains on the east-facing window and slept through. Suffering from a rare hangover, I groaned while heading to the kitchen. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and gulped it down. Then, I sat on the living room sofa, feeling blank. My mind was empty, but that was a sensation I hadn't felt since my student days, which strangely made me a bit happy. However, old habits die hard. Despite not feeling hungry, I thought I should make breakfast.
Take it easy, you have all the time now.
I said to myself and chuckled. Then I thought of calling my daughter and visiting her.
Right, I should do what I've always wanted to do.
I muttered. Just then, my mobile phone rang. It was Kennedy. Good morning, Mr. Kennedy. What's the matter? Calling so early.
It's not about what's the matter, Victoria. I tried calling you last night too. Never mind that. Could you come to the office, please?
But I resigned as of yesterday.
Just come, please. This is an order. I'll be in my office.
All right. An order, that's not something one says to someone who has resigned. Yet, I thought, if he's insisting so much, it must be something urgent. I soothed my aching head with hot coffee, gulping it down as it cooled. Then, I called a taxi and headed to the office. Excuse me. I knocked and entered the president's office.
Good morning. Sorry for calling you in so early.
Kennedy wanted to hear about what happened yesterday. I explained everything, careful not to exaggerate my words or reactions.
I see. I am very sorry about that.
He expressed his deep apology.
The mess my foolish daughter made is my responsibility as her father. It seems I made mistakes in raising her. Victoria, would you consider withdrawing your resignation? We started here together, after all. Please.
I had harbored no negative feelings towards him, only gratitude for employing me for a long time. But his words caught me off guard. President Kennedy, it's not fair using our shared past like that.
So, will you?
All right. I'm counting on you.
Morning.
Saying that, he entered the design department office. I was told to wait in the hallway until called. The door was left open, so I could hear the conversation inside.
Dad, what are you doing here? Did we have a plan? Do not call me Dad here.
His uncharacteristically stern tone seemed to surprise Carol.
I have a question for you, Carol.
What is it?
The two began to speak in a formal tone.
Why did Victoria resign?
Oh, as per her resignation letter. Personal reasons.
Don't lie.
Kennedy glared at Carol as he spoke in a low voice.
It's not a lie. She left because of her age.
The surrounding staff were all left speechless.
Don't lie. I've heard everything about what happened.
In that instant, Carol glanced sharply at the employees.
Someone spilled the beans.
And muttered under her breath. Suddenly, Kennedy raised his voice.
Don't make a fool of me.
Carol stood up, startled, her eyes wide open.
Victoria.
I was called and immediately entered the room. Carol's eyes were so wide open, it seemed they might fall out.
Carol, I heard it from Victoria. You don't seem to understand what you did.
She seemed to have calmed down a bit. Even so, she took a deep breath before proceeding. How do I know if her story is true?
Fool!
Carol collapsed to the floor.
Who do you think you are? Don't underestimate the real world. Listen, you don't understand Victoria's value to our company at all.
The conversation had turned into one between parent and child.
It's not just about how long she has worked,
Carol said defiantly. Kennedy was completely exasperated.
How dare you? Victoria has been faithfully serving for 40 years, designing 90% of our flagship products. She's the backbone of our company. Without her, the design department would fall apart. She's irreplaceable. You, on the other hand, are easily replaceable. Understand?
Carol was at a loss for words, but she bit her lip and glared at Kennedy.
Then you should have told me that. How am I supposed to know if no one tells me?
She spoke like a petulant child, and laughter could be heard from the staff. Carol glared at them. Seeing that, Kennedy turned towards the staff.
Everyone, I am truly sorry. This incident is my responsibility as her father. That's right, I never wanted to be in this department in the first place. Dad is to blame.
I thought my blood vessels might burst.
You are unbelievably hopeless.
Kennedy and Carol both looked surprised, caught off guard. I had made up my mind. Carol, let me be clear. You are not cut out for a managerial role. In fact, you have a fatal flaw as a professional. Your conversation with President Kennedy just now proves it. You may have forgotten, but you called me an older lady. And as I've said before, your judgment in design is non-existent. It's hopeless. Carol was still in shock. I've changed my mind and decided to come back to work, for the sake of the president and the design department. I've chosen to cherish my passion. I then said to Kennedy, I'm sorry for my outburst. He shook his head and replied,
Not at all. Thank you.
Carol was biting her lip in frustration again, this time looking down. Then, a phone call came. It was for Carol, but after a moment of hesitation, Kennedy answered it. The caller was Lee. Kennedy listened, nodding and showing surprise at times, and eventually said,
That's fine. I apologize for the inconvenience. We look forward to continued cooperation.
He hung up. It was about the selection of the design. Lee said that although my design was his top choice, he reluctantly went with Wilson's due to Carol's strong insistence and persuasion. He found it hard to discard my design and thus reached out. It seemed that Carol had come to terms with the situation. She finally seemed to surrender. She dropped like a wilting sunflower. After Lee's call, Kennedy laid out the conditions to Carol in front of the staff.
You will decide your own future. If you want to work in our company, start from the new employee training. Otherwise, you'll be assigned to one of our client companies.
Greatly humbled, Carol replied in a faint voice, Yes. After the two left, all the staff gathered around me, expressing their joy. Although it was the unfortunate outcome for Wilson, see, I told you. This is for the best. He said with a smile. Indeed, it seemed like things turned out just as he and everyone else had initially felt about Carol. That experience reminded me of how important intuition is for a designer. Subsequently, our market expansion into the UK went well. This time, we targeted teenagers. We found that the sensibilities of American and British teenagers are quite similar. While I don't think it applies to all age groups, it was a revelation. Considering the global use of social media, it's clear that sharing of sensibilities is happening faster than imagined. So, I believe that designs aimed at American consumers could also sell well. At my age, I never thought I'd be doing work with such a worldwide impact. I'm more motivated than ever. Visiting my daughter will have to wait. I guess it'll be another video call tonight.